definitely.
All right. And now we're recording as well. Hello, Julie.
Jill, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Hanging in there.
That's what I'm doing. I'm okay. I've had lots of people message me and ask me how I'm doing in these crazy times or in these worrying times or in these turbulent times. And the amount of messages, it's lovely to have people checking in, but it's really interesting to see how you can see where their mind is, you can see where they are with how they're messaging, because it's obviously coming out and they can't help it. And I'm just like, I'm fine. I'm cool. I'm all right.
Yeah. I haven't heard people saying that. I mean, you see it on Facebook, but I have people who, kind of got in touch, have just asked, how you doing, but people haven't said those specific things about, in these.
It's been on Facebook, to be fair, and probably most of them are trying to sell something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That goes on. But yeah, it's interesting in reading people's like posts, and the language that people use if you're into linguistics is really, really fascinating, because again, you get, we've got some people joining us. Hello.
I'm gonna just make sure everyone's muted for now.
So anyway, this was your topic, wasn't it? This is something that I saw you post about, and I said, let's do a live on it. So we'll let you start.
Yeah, I actually stole it from somebody else. I was sharing that guy Roger Castillo. I don't know if you say Castillo or Castillo, but he's been doing these satsangs every morning since a lot of this happened, and which I've been listening to, and they've been really good and interesting. And the stuff he talks about is just so similar to what I think, to my truth, and what I know is right. And he said one day on Facebook, I think I saved it here, you can continue to vehemently defend your position on this and that in life, feeling that the opposite view is absolutely invalid, and suffer. And I'm like, yeah, totally. It's that suffering thing that, I mean, a lot of people I didn't understand what suffering meant, years ago, before I started getting into all this kind of psycho-spiritual stuff. I remember when I was younger listening to or reading some Buddhist stuff, and they talked so much about suffering, and I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this Buddhist stuff, because I never felt like I suffered. I was a happy-go-lucky person, and it seemed so down and so negative to me then about suffering. I'm like, because it was completely like, we all suffer and whatever, and it's only now, after learning what I've learned all these years, that I saw that I was suffering. I didn't know, because I just didn't know, like, all the anxiety that I had in my head was it didn't have to be there. I didn't need to be going around with that feeling all day long. Not feeling comfortable in my own skin was what could be what the Buddhists mean by suffering. And it's the same with when we fight anything, whether it's another person, a situation, like what's happening now. A couple of weeks ago, I was suffering because I was not just accepting what was happening. I was not happy with it at one point. I didn't care so much about the virus itself. I didn't like the whole idea of being told, that we couldn't go out and stuff. And that was more where my head was. And then thinking about the future, what, now they're going to tell us what to do all the time. I was going there, and I was suffering. I knew it didn't feel good. I didn't, I knew it was ego. I knew it didn't feel good, but I didn't care. Like, I liked it. I wanted to feel that at that time. And then I didn't. Eventually, I didn't want to feel it. And I heard something again, I think by this Roger guy, you were just saying something like, accept, as soon as we accept something, we don't suffer anymore. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's all. That's right. Yeah, and it's not like you can accept. Acceptance isn't even a doing either, but it's like a seeing it differently. This is what's happening. End of story. This is what's happening. I can fight it or I can suffer. And it's the same with thinking we're right and defending that. Like if so what if somebody's like doing something ridiculous and that, or the wrong way, you always get that one, like your kids or spouse, the way they're doing the cleaning, let's say, it's completely wrong, right? They're doing, it's not good enough, or it's too detailed, or they're using the wrong products, whatever it might be. And you can be watching it and being like, no, and going crazy because it's not the way we would do it. And so that's the suffering, the going crazy part. Like, and then if we want to defend it, no, do it this way, we just make it worse. We compound it. And instead of just, walking away, whatever, at least they're cleaning, like, who cares? It doesn't have to be our way. And it's the same with everything. And it's so much because of, it's all, to me, based on the fact that we live in these separate realities. Our truth in quotes, seems like the truth. It feels right. Like it's so the feeling we get with our truth, like, of course it's right. I know it. It's a fact. These things are the truth. Everything we believe, and that's all it is, really, is beliefs. And so of course we have to defend it, because it's like, of course it's right, and if mine's right, yours has to be wrong, because it just feels so real. Just like our favorite color, our favorite ice cream, it's like, how could somebody like, that other gross flavor? Who would like vanilla when there's chocolate?
Some chocolate.
Yeah, it just makes it doesn't compute in our programming, but that's what it is. It's really just our programming. It's our mixture of all our conditioning and our genetics and our preferences and all that, and it makes us our cool, unique self. But it's not right necessarily. It's not truth. It's beliefs, it's thought, and we don't have to defend it. We can still believe whatever we want to believe. And other people should be allowed to believe whatever they want to believe. Like, who cares if they believe something else? That's my brief take on this. I could probably go on forever.
I think it's so true though, isn't it? Because I have been known once or twice to have to be right. I have been known to be like a dog with a bone over something and just refusing to let it go, and will go on and on and on and on until my point of view has been accepted, acknowledged, agreed with, and all of that rubbish. And I can laugh at myself while I'm doing it at the same time. So you know what? I'm not going to be sitting here saying that. You know what? I'm too enlightened. It doesn't work with me, because when that dishwasher doesn't get loaded right, I'm like, for God's sake, it's not rocket science. At the end of the day, we can all very, very quickly get drawn into something, and it can happen so quickly as well. But for me, when we really believe that we're right about something, if we feel that strongly about something that we have to put somebody else right to a degree with it, I think the way I'm looking at it mostly now is that I'm just forgetting that there's more than one point of view in the world. That I'm that tunnel visioned on how I can see something. I've closed myself off to seeing the rest of the picture. And we learn all the time, always learning something new. So why would we want to close ourselves off to something just because we don't want to let somebody else win? We don't think somebody else is doing as we think they should. Again, it's not suffering in the traditional way that people would say, oh, I'm suffering, I'm in pain, I'm in agony. But it is suffering because we are we are causing ourselves unnecessary friction, arguments, bad feelings, grumpiness, just hormones racing through our body, chemicals running through our bodies that are triggering the stress response, that are bringing our immune system down, that we've all done it. We've all sat there with our arms folded in a strop watching the television because the other person hasn't agreed with something. I hope I'm not just the only one that's done that. And we can say that we're not suffering because of it. But do you know what? If something's not making us feel good, and we're doing it ourselves, we're causing our own suffering. And I think it's much more valuable to realize that when we think we've got to be right, that's a perfect indicator for what are we not seeing. Mm-hmm. And I know I very often don't remember that, but it is.
It's always, I think by definition, it has to be coming from ego. And, you know, by the fact that it's coming from ego and personal thought means that it's not in alignment with our true self. Like our true self doesn't need to be right. You know, our true self doesn't care, it just would love the other person anyway, you know, and that's why that's where why you might call it suffering, because it's always ego. And it's interesting too, because like, it's funny, certain things that people like, my sister, she's basically sort of atheist. Like I grew up that way too, and I was, and you know, all this spiritual crap that I'm into, you know, she's always like, she always has to post something, or if I see her in person, she lives in Hawaii, so I don't see her often, but it's like she's always got to try and change my mind, that, you know, like, and I'm like, why does it matter to you what I believe on this? I said, I don't know if it's true. You know, maybe it's what you say. I don't know. I'm like, but why do you feel the need to like make me see your way or the truth? And she's like, I remember asking her that, and I'm trying to think how she put it. She's like, because it doesn't seem good that you should not know this truth, or something like that. It's like this, and I can understand, because I used to be the same way, and probably still am on some things. But I remember thinking that too, as an atheist, especially like people who believe in God or anything like that, or life after death, or, you know, like they need to know. They need to know they're just full of crap. And it's so weird. It's like this weird need. They need to know.
We can see that by having to be the person that has to put people right. You know, we keep saying in this that it's never about the other person. It's always 100% all about us. Mm-hmm. And this is a perfect example of that. Because when we've got to tell somebody that they're right, or we've got to get that point across, absolutely nothing to do with the other person, about what they understand, what they agree with, what they think, know, want, feel, or are involved in. It's 100% to do with where we are, what our thinking's saying, and how much our ego is coming out to play for us to feel as though we've got to correct them. Because as you say, what does it matter? What does it matter if you and I have got completely different opposing views on ice cream or whatever it is? Because it doesn't impact my life, what you live, how you live, what you like, what you do, and nor should it, and vice versa. But we seem to think that even when we say we're not judgmental people, we might not do it with other people. But I think everybody's got some people, could be children, could be partners, could be family, that we tend to forget that rule applies to them as well. So it's really, these conversations like this are always really, I think, always really useful to have, because we always fall into the trap of thinking there's an exception, and there really is never an exception.
Yep. It just occurred to me as you were talking that I think it's also a like a threat to our identity, and maybe that's the reason. Like our identity is, is so seemingly solid in our minds, and so all those truths that we have, if somebody else doesn't believe it too, then it's like, well, what does that say about me? Maybe maybe there's something like that in it too, that reason for it. And again, and that's why we would suffer.
Does anybody have anything that they'd like to join in and say on this topic? So it's not just about Jill and I. I'll have a quick look on Facebook at the same time. Hi, Lucy. Hi, Tanya. Hi, Trish. Let me see. Hi, Helen.
Looks like Lucy joined us on Facebook, but not here.
So if anybody got any comments to say, if anybody would like to join in the conversation who's on the Zoom with us, or if you would like to say anything on the Facebook, feel free, let us share your views. Oh, use it to stall. Is it just me that's like a dog with a bone over certain things, and if you just all got it nailed? Is that what it is?
It's the it's a funny when we do it, when, like, if we were to argue about this topic, like say, no, it's okay to defend the truth. That would be the double irony.
Wouldn't it just, no, Jill, you're wrong.
But I can tell you, I used to, in my old work, I participated in online forums for 20 something years, and in various forms before Facebook ever existed, and I was always very vocal online, because I was so quiet and shy in person, but put me behind that keyboard and it was like, oh, who is this person? it was so freeing for me to be able to just like give my opinion and to tell everyone how wrong they were. Like, it was really, there was something so compelling for my ego to do that. And I did carry that over a bit even into this new world. And I do feel like now I don't feel that need as much anymore. If people are asking questions and looking for help, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm not going to argue with them over the answers. And there was a guy on Facebook recently in one of the groups that was, he was arguing about whether I was saying there's really no such thing as truth, the truth. I at this point, I just don't even know what's true. I think it's so much of it is all coming from our own beliefs. And this somehow hurt this guy deep down inside, that there could be no truth. And he was posting all these long things and going on and on about it. And I'm just like, maybe, I don't know. and then he went on even more, because he took my short answers as something bad or mean. And so it was really funny to watch him. I felt a little sorry for him, because he seemed to be really upset about it. But it was interesting to watch how he could, again, it was something with his identity that he had to be right, and he wasn't getting that satisfaction, because nobody would really argue with him. Everyone's like, okay.
No, I'm certainly, I don't have any dogs now. I know probably even up until last year, I was getting a little bit, I was going to say wound up, but that's not right. There was some people talking about some things, and I wanted to learn more about it, sort of form a view about it. And every time I asked about it, nobody would say anything more about it. It was just like, oh, well, you're missing the point. Exactly, that's why I'm asking you about it. I know I'm missing something. I want to know what I'm missing. And just to get like thumbs up or just to not get any replies, I found quite infuriating, because how can you learn if nobody's willing to have a conversation with you? And I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to be shown not saying, but it didn't seem though anybody was willing to have that conversation. So basically I just blocked a lot of people, moved on. So I just thought, you know what, I've tried for so long, there's no point in having, if I'm meant to say something, if I'm not, then I won't. You know, we can, doesn't matter how much we know, no matter how grounded we are, there can always be times that don't say something, or that something. I love Lucy's just put, I love the fact that the phrase that you're so right, you could only be wrong. And I think that sounded like that gentleman that you were talking about, you know, because he wasn't getting the response back. He had to keep proving his point. He had to keep telling you. So if you didn't understand, that's why you're only giving the shorter responses, possibly. And I think possibly
that whole thing with I'm not explaining myself good enough or well enough. That's a definite thing with this needing to be right, you know, because you'll hear it in Zoom calls and things too, where people are trying to be right, or they don't like the answer they're getting. It doesn't jibe with their thing, and they try to explain it again. It's like, no, I understand.
And so that was me with this, trying to find more about this understanding that I was hearing about, and that I couldn't see it. So I just tried, asked, went to people, I'd have a conversation, tell us, speak to us, what am I not saying? And it just didn't happen. So I was like, okay, fair enough, hands off the steering wheel and let's just move on. It's about how much investment, when we catch ourselves being that dog with the bone, we've got the choice to continue holding that bone and having a tug of war with it, or just let it go, because there's always going to be other bones around. There's always going to be something else, right? And I think because we understand that it's always us, that can be pretty difficult for our own ego, and as you say, our own identity to actually accept times, especially when I see being a bit of a plonker or something, being a bit of, you know, making a little bit of afros. I don't know if afros or not. Especially if we see ourselves being a little, yeah, I thought I had. You know, when we know that really, you know, we're being a little bit silly over something, actually then just hands up and going, you know what, got caught out. We can do that with some people, but then there's some other people that we just think to ourselves, not doing that. We'll just move on and not say nothing. Yeah, what's the difference? It's all us. It's no different.
Yeah. People that we're closer with, maybe, you know, we feel more comfortable being able to do that with. And you know, really with this whole being quarantined and being stuck with our loved ones, I'm sure this comes up a lot for people right now, and it really, really is helpful for relationships to remember this. I mean, I have a whole blog post from years ago called, you know, learning to keep my mouth shut or something like that, and it's a two-parter.
I remember that post.
Yeah, and it's really helpful. It's been really helpful for my relationships, all of them, to just remember that, you know, because so many times, you know, you're just about to say something to prove that you're right and stuff, and there's no reason to, you know, like the harmony is kept so much better when you just smile and nod. And sometimes even that alone, they kind of know you're disagreeing, but it you know, they stop talking then.
They know that you're not really giving them getting them the full attention. That's, yeah. Hans has just put he's happy to be agreeing with us.
Yeah, good.
You know, there's a reason, you know, I think the statistics go up after Christmas and after the Christmas holidays virtually every year for solicitors and people going to see about having a separation or a divorce, because people are in close proximity and they're spending a lot of time together at a time when they're supposed to be happy. You know, and all of the pressures that can put on people. And with this lockdown that we're on, you know, I get fed up with myself sometimes. So why wouldn't my husband, why wouldn't my daughter get fed up with me as well? And we all, if I'm in a grumpy mood and my daughter's in a grumpy mood, what's going to happen if we both decide that we've got to be right over something? Nothing good. Nothing good's going to happen over that. And will it really matter over the stupidness of something that we're going to be having a discussion about in an hour's time or 3 hours time or the next day? No. So this is how we innocently cause our own suffering by jumping into and giving energy to things that really don't need our time or energy being given to. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be right. Being right isn't. What are the actual benefits of being right? How long do they last? If you think about it, if any of us, if you think about when we've wanted to be right over something, even when we have, how quickly has it passed? Whereas before we've actually been right, we'll stick with it and stick with it and stick. But if someone goes, yeah, you're right. No, it's got in a flash.
It's almost the fight. The fight is where the fun is. And then if they agree, like, oh, you don't want me to keep it. I have to say, Google comes in handy for these disagreements. You can, you're like, all right, let's look it up. If you're, we do that a lot here.
Yeah. Sue's just saying something there.
Sue said, I have certainly seen this more during this current time. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see this is can be causing a lot of problems. That there could be a lot of abuse now happening with the just everyone being stuck together. I am really pleased with the way my family's been. My husband's been a dream, surprisingly. not surprisingly, but I think he's learned a lot of this stuff over the years too, and I feel like maybe it's really all come to a head for him too, where he's really learned acceptance, and he's an extrovert who wants to be going out and stuff, and him not getting to go out every night like we usually do. I thought I was a little worried about that, and he's had no problem. He's been better than I haven't been complaining more than he has. And we haven't had, I'm knocking wood here, we haven't had any arguments or fights or anything, and I am attributing it to him.
Of course. And you're about to be right. Yeah, it's interesting. As you say, there's already been, unfortunately, very sad deaths already been reported through domestic violence, and if you could you imagine the difference that if everybody really got a glimpse of this, if everybody at least took the time to explore, had heard of it, and actually didn't have to be right, didn't have to prove a point, didn't have to feed their ego. If they could just see that having to be right, that tiny little thing, having to be right, causes so much pain and suffering for so many, for nothing.
I think some of it too is it's a hit to your ego, like I said before, your identity, but I think it can go deeper, maybe, psychologically speaking, that it goes to your insecurities. If you're being told you're wrong, it hits you, right? We're all your insecurities. I'm stupid, I'm this. And so you defend back potentially, no, I'm not, you know, and you, because you're defending that, you know, you don't want to be thought of as stupid. So you're only, if we are the ones trying to correct people, you know, that's all we're doing is hurting their insecurities. It's, I mean, it's not our fault. We can't help what insecurities they have, but why, you know, why do we want to feed that in people, and instead of having a loving relationship?
What can also be misunderstood is that quite often the person that insists on being right can also be just as insecure. That they've got to be right because they don't want to admit that they're wrong because of all of their own insecurities as well. So it's a two-way street, both sides, isn't it? It's
for sure.
Yeah, it's both ways. It's insecurities, and we're all human. We all, you know, we have what 70 to 100,000 thoughts a day. Probably about 2,500 of them we have a conscious awareness of, and we couldn't put our attention on all of those that we become consciously aware of to do something about them. But knowing that it's not going to be long before our state changes, our thinking changes, or our experience of whatever's going on is going to change. And again, you know, you say talking about people feeling as though that someone's attacking them and calling them stupid, or, you know, they're wrong in some way, so they're less intelligent, or of all of the different possibilities that could be. There's just how much that's brought up, you know, from it just doesn't happen to adults. It can come up from being really, really young. You see children going on like that as well with each other, and if they could learn this so much younger, then as they grew up, and life would be so much simpler for them to realize that, yeah, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're just human. Do you want to see what Sue's saying?
Two egos fighting each other, right? You know, if you go there, you know, if you're having that argument, so you get two insecurities just trying to protect their own, you know, their own selves, and having this ridiculous argument over really nothing, right? I mean, are any arguments within marriages or families, like, when you think of them later, you know, you're like, what? They hardly ever seem to be about anything important. They're like the stupidest things, or in a bar or whatever, you know, arguing over silly things. And it's just, it's always ego. And that's why we always suffer if we keep on defending our position.
And people stop talking to families, people get divorced, people stop talking to their children. There's so much extra suffering that goes on from that silly little thing that seemed such a big thing at the time. And then because people still want to be right, they don't want to be the one to contact the other person because of this ego again. It's not even in the moment. It can have long-lasting effects and impacts because they still don't want to be the one to be seen. Or well, if they contact the other person, they must have been wrong.
Yep. And then it's this whole story. You're like, what does that say about me? If I give in, and then they'll be right. You know, they'll have the last word. Like, it's really so. I find our ego so fascinating in all that it does.
And how so you say, you know, because I agree with you when you were talking in the beginning, when you said that you would read all of these things and you would read that all of the human suffering, all of the suffering. I thought the same. I'm not suffering. I'm doing all right. Thank you very much. Because again, it's not really seen, or interpretation of the suffering is completely different until you look at it, until you see just how much, you know. I've had fallouts with family that just can't ever now be reconciled because they died. You know, it wasn't my fault. Yeah, I'll have had some part in it, But, you know, certainly having to play that role, and we've all had experiences, and we've all, I don't probably know anybody who doesn't know somebody that they've had quite a, where they've stopped speaking to somebody, where they've stopped contacting somebody, where they don't bother with somebody as much, or whether, and this is another one, when our partners can get involved and say they shouldn't treat you like that, they shouldn't talk to you like that, they're in the wrong, you're in the right, you shouldn't contact them because you've done nothing wrong. And there's that bit, there's all of the extended added to it. And innocently, the partners are quite often just wanting to defend and help, but it's not necessarily helpful.
Right. And that's so much suffering, really. You know, suffering is a strong word, and I think that's why I didn't resonate with it before. But I don't know another word for it. You know, if we're not feeling peace, then that's all. It's the opposite of peace, I would say. But yeah, like there's like, yeah, that I never understood it. I'm thankfully I've never had family where that I, you know, not speaking, you know, because of any particular reason or whatever. And I've never understood that either. Like I could never, you know, their family, and like I never understood people not being able to let go, things like that, thankfully. But I've seen it in other, you know, I've seen it with other people and stuff. I remember I even had a friend who I still to this day don't know what I did or said, and she just stopped talking to me. But then, like years later, all of a sudden she started talking to me again, and I was like, okay, that's cool. but it, like, yeah, she must have decided in her mind it was a long enough period, or you know, to make me suffer.
Oh, you're sorry now.
But yeah, like just to not speak to somebody. Decide that in your mind. You have to make a conscious decision. I am not going to speak to that person, you know, because of whatever. Like I don't know. That has to be. I believe in forgiveness, and anything in the past, you know, isn't. Yeah.
I've always been like that, and unfortunately, the family member with me got married to somebody else, and this other person didn't think like that.
That's what it is.
And the other person didn't think like that, and because I wanted the person to be happy, I just took my hands off and just, you know, backed away, and just thinking he was doing the right thing, no, not thinking that, you know, they were going to go and die on me. Not that they didn't die on me, but you know what I mean. And yet that happened. So if anything, it's I mean, I've never really been one to carry grudges like that anyway, but that's certainly probably maybe more proactive on that as well. Because it's, you know, it's a silly little thing that we can have. Yeah, I totally agree. Forgiveness is freeing, and the only person that we ever hurt when we hold on to having to be right or being angry at somebody, we're hurting ourselves. We do it all the time. And, you know, even with the family member I was talking about, I loved them to bits, you know, couldn't ever possibly do anything. It was just like, okay, I don't want to cause any problems between you and your wife, so I'll just back away, you know. And that's literally all the innocence of it was. But we don't know how life's going to plan out. And again, that's to the extreme about somebody having to be right. That's how it can actually go. And I know I'm certainly not the only person that's had that experience.
Yeah.
And how unimportant is it having to be right when you really look at where the top and where you can go? Why make yourself? You wouldn't go into the kitchen and put your hand on the hot oven. You wouldn't go and do that. You wouldn't go into the kitchen and put your hand on the hob or something and or in the fire. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't go and run the scalding hot water, put your foot in it. We wouldn't do it. Yet we constantly, effortlessly, frequently put ourselves in situations, or even sometimes keep ourselves in situations longer than we need to, that cause us equal suffering, just in a different way.
Mm-hmm. And it is a need to be right too, when you won't forgive. That's a subtle need to be right, like that. It's as if you're saying that it was okay and it was right what they did or whatever, or just, you're disagreeing. It's so interesting how that mixes in with it all. It's still, because it's still ego if you can't forgive.
Just because you get a feeling that comes with something doesn't mean to say what you're thinking is right.
That's for sure. What we're thinking is rarely right.
Exactly. Just because we get that uncomfortableness, or if you think about it, if it's a person or a time when we've had to be right, and you think about what what emotions came up in that, and you think about it after that, and it changes, and it's just how you were at that one particular time. It's not how you are. It's not who you are. It's a snapshot, literally a snapshot in your life, and that snapshot we can take to be so just so, as if it was a major part of our life. And we don't have to be right. We don't have to hold on to forgiveness, hold on to angst or anything. That if it's not serving us, we don't need to hold on to it.
Yeah. And when we understand this sort of thing, we can see when another person is having that need to be right. We can see that more, because we understand that, just from listening to everything we're talking about today, we know it for ourselves, how it feels so real. And so by remembering that when other people are acting in that way with their needs to be right, like that's what changes the relationships, because we don't care. We can, that's just them defending their identity again. Okay. And then then there's nothing for us to even argue with or defend either, because we see what's happening. And yeah, that's interesting. And so that's where you almost, forgiveness isn't even necessary, because there's nothing to forgive. It's just so-and-so acting like so-and-so. That's what so-and-so does.
They've just forgotten that it's not that important in the moment. And I think you are so much more kinder. And when you see somebody else doing that, you take it with a pinch of salt, as opposed to taking it again as something that's real. And even if they're ranting and raving, which my husband did it the other day, it was something really silly. Came in and he said something, and I was just like, "Why?" And he went up the stairs. I was like, "Oh, somebody's in a straw." Probably wasn't the best thing to do, because it was winding him up even more. And he was just like, ranting away as he went up the stairs. And he comes in and says, "Oh, you finished yet?" But because I was laughing about it, he ended up just like, just like stormed off for a little bit, come in, and it was all forgotten about. I didn't need to get drawn into that, or respond to that, or react to that, or match it even with the same energy.
Right.
Because it wasn't important. It was just like, he's just blown off, having a bit of a moan because someone had been going right on probably fixing one of the cars. So, if you don't meet somebody's negative energy with negative energy, it's got to improve your life.
Oh yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road with this understanding for me, because it's all about relationships, and it's not thinking all these people need to know this and need to change. It's seeing, oh, they're feeling, they're thinking in the moment, and so of course they're acting this way. And then having that compassion, where if you don't play into it, you don't do the whole Eckhart Tolle pain body thing back, then it has to dissipate, because like anger or ego can't stay that way in the presence of love or presence itself. If you are present to that, and you can be more present to that when you're not anxious because, there's no reason to be anxious. They're just feeling, they're thinking in the moment. And so you can be present, and it really dissolves situations like that. And again, that really does tie in with this whole needing to be right thing too.
Exactly the same with our children. And I've spoken to a few parents who have been driven to distraction because their children, they're confined, they're, acting out a little bit, or, not going to bed, or not doing the schoolwork that they want them to do, and a million different things that the parents have got expectations on. And, again, how much of that ego is down to what will the school think about me? Will they think I'm a good parent or a bad parent? What about everybody else who's done loads of schoolwork and my child hasn't? And then the whole load of rubbish that goes with that. And at the end of the day, everyone's just doing what they can. And when we remember that, we get these days where we want to just go out and do something. We want to go. I was joking the other day, so I think I might pop to the medical centre, do a bit of shopping, get something to eat, and just that conversation of all the things that we can't do, right? But our kids want to do that as well. They're not seeing their friends. They've lost all their routine. Yes, they're very lucky. They've got Skype and Zoom and all of these apps that they can stay in contact with them that way. But it's still not the same as having their routine that they've had for as many years as however they're alive. And they're feeling it, and they are getting caught up in their thinking. And when the two fireballs meet, if their parents having a grumpy day and the child's having a grumpy day, it's going to happen. And when we can see that, because I think quite often parents can when they're in this understanding, they can get it for themselves, but it's easy to forget that children work the same way. Children don't work any different. They are just thinking, they're feeling in the moment, and kids being kids have got less of a filter. They just go straight out with it, whatever it is. But they also get over it a lot quicker as well. And we don't need, as soon as we decide that we have to be right, that we have to pick a fight, that we have to get a point across, we've lost, because we're not getting heard ever. You can shout louder and louder and louder, but you get heard less and less and less.
That's true. Nobody hears someone when they're coming from ego that way. It's like there's a meme, I think, on Facebook, like, something like, has anyone ever changed someone's mind, from posting something on Facebook, like, it's just not even heard. It goes in one ear, out the other. I'm happy not, that I don't have little kids during this, because I feel sorry for so many parents, as if I hear a lot of stories from other people, and it's just so really hard, like you say, routines. We all like routine. That's the part for me, and I'm home anyway, but I feel like my routine's been disrupted, and it's amazing how much we depend on routine. Our brain likes routine. So kids, that's what we do, right? As soon as they're born, we try to get them into a routine. I can't even imagine. I guess they're getting presumably into new routines as well now, but I could see that being cranky.
Everything becomes our new norm quite quickly. I think we are resilient beings. We are resilient enough to adapt very, very quickly to things. That's why we survive so well. But when children are used to going out and burning off energy and just running around and playing football or out on the bikes and going to the park and running to the beach, and all of those energy is like pent up in the house. And they've got a parent saying to them, go and do your homework, or go and do some schoolwork. It's like, that's the last thing that they want to do in that current time. And there's a lot of conflict going on. There's a lot of upsetment. There's a lot of self-judgment. Parents, I've noticed, are giving themselves a lot of hard times over how they should be doing and what should be going on. And I had a conversation with somebody earlier on today, and I went, tell you what, go and ask all of your friends how many of them have actually at the beginning of this lockdown, how many of them have turned around and said, well, I'm going to do this, this and this, and how many of them have actually followed through with it? Because I don't know very many. We just, our new norm just becomes our new norm. And noticing when feeling guilty, we quite often will try and prove our point by guilt or from guilt. If we're not feeling as though we've done enough, we can try and be right and make somebody say our point of view and do something. Doesn't make it right though. This causes more suffering. This causes more problems for us.
And my exercise teacher, my bar class teacher, was, when this first was happening, we were doing online classes, we still are, and there was a couple of single moms on there, and they were really frustrated and really worried that they weren't doing enough, like you were saying, and not knowing what to do with their kids. And my bar teacher her kids are maybe teenagers, and she said, you know what, these kids were littler that she was talking about. She said, your kids are going to be fine whether they don't learn anything else for the rest of this year. They'll catch up. It's not that important. Just be with them. And I was really proud of her when she said. I thought, it was really good, and I think it really did help some of these younger parents, because you don't realize, you think this is these kids have to learn this stuff now or never. But as you had kids, as they've grown up, you realize it's not that important.
We can look back at it, but at the time, as you say, it's a different how things look. It looks so real, and we take our actions based on what looks so real. And yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult in so many different ways. And then when you get one parent or one person who is doing everything right, if there's such a right way of doing it, and then everybody else just thinks, oh, and then this person can lord it over. Well, you're not doing it. Have you not done that? Have you not done that? And again, really, that's their insecurities by saying that. We can miscommunicate so easily, and we do it all the time. And I think it's really valuable to get into the practice of saying, I was talking a little rubbish there. Because we all do. We all have times when we do. If we say, do you know what, I really didn't even make any sense to myself, never mind what I said to you, and just not have, really actively practice not having to get it right. I know coaches who send people off to get things wrong in a particular week, and I know people who, because that's where the learning is. It's not about being right all the time. The learning's in not being right.
Good point. That's a real good point. You definitely learn when you make mistakes and do things wrong. And so if you are having somebody always telling you the right way, you're not going to learn as much either. So that goes for your own kids, for yourself. The other thing you mentioned about seeing the certain people that seem like they're doing it all perfect and right, but making comparisons like that is never going to be helpful, because most likely that person inside is not feeling that they're thinking everybody else is doing it right, and because nobody ever kind of believes unless they're the narcissist type personality, but they're not doing it right either. And everybody feels like they're not doing enough, and that it's really important to know you're not the only ones feeling that way. Everybody feels that way at one time or another, and even the person who looks to be got it all together, we don't know what's going on in their head, and we probably wouldn't want to be living in their head either.
Nobody's got the perfect life, the perfect experience, gets everything right. There's just no such thing in the world, because we're all human and we all work the same way. Yeah. We have good days, we have bad days, we get things right, we get things wrong. But I think there's really something about when you were talking about the young parents, about learning. And I remember when I had my first daughter, she's 32 now, and I had my mother-in-law and different family members all telling me completely conflicting advice. You've got to do this, you should do this, you should, don't pick the baby up with it, don't, and it was mind-boggling, the different advice that I got. And in the finish, I was like, thank you very much, everybody. if I need your help, I will ask. I'm just going to try and figure it out as I go along now. And that's that, because you literally couldn't follow everybody else's. And I did a post yesterday for a magazine that's coming out, just an e-magazine that's coming out, and I think I said something along the lines of parents aren't born when their children are born. Parents are made by all of the things that they go through with their children. We make it the label of being a parent when our children's born, but we have to learn, we have to make mistakes, we have to have triumphs. Being a parent is a trial and error thing. It's certain, and that's why there might be millions of parent books out there, there's no manual for raising a child because they're unique and so are we.
That's really good to remember. That's something I'm glad you mentioned it too, because like my oldest daughter is wanting to have children soon, and I think I could see that as a grandparent. I remember when my own mother, when my kids were little too. Some of it's helpful for sure especially when you're brand new with a new baby. Definitely helpful. But then there, gets to be part, and it makes, the new mother can feel so inadequate if their mother is disapproving somehow or whatever. And so remember, that's where I'm going to have to go back to remembering about keeping my mouth shut and stuff, I'm sure, because, I'm sure my daughters will have different ways of raising their kids, different ways of being. And that's fine.
And everything you'll try and share with them will come from the best possible place. It'll come from wanting, the most love, and wanting them to be, as happy and as secure and as doing as easy a job as possible. But when you're sleep deprived, it's just not slept for days. When you're going through 47 bibs in a day, which I did with both of mine, 45 and 47 bibs a day, because I had constant mumbling, and you just, even the best advice in the world is you just feel like saying, just give us a break. And it's so even that there's about being right. Being right's got so many different avenues that it can come from. Yeah. And it's still only right from how that person looks and feels and thinks at a moment in time, and changes the next one.
It's my way or the highway.
Choose the highway every time.
Well, thank you, Julie. This was another great conversation, and we kind of even made it stay on topic, even though we verged off a little bit, but we brought it back around very well.
It's good to stay on topic for a change.
Thank you, people who came here and were listening in with us, and those of you on Facebook who were listening in with us. And I will have a recording too I'll put up on YouTube. Okay. Nice to see you all.
Got anything that you'd like to add? Pop it on the post on Jill's page, and any future conversations that you'd like to discuss or go off topic with. Feel free to do that as well.
Yeah, any ideas would be great.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to end the meeting. See you all. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.